Hi, I'm Peter and welcome back to History and Sabre, the channel where I talk about HEMA, history and swords. Given that I talk about Austrian and Austro-Hungarian swords on this channel, I thought why not also talk about Austrian and Austro-Hungarian treatises. So that's what I'm going to do. This is the first video in a multi-part series where I look at Austrian and Austro-Hungarian fencing treatises from the late 18th through to the early 20th century. So this is meant as an overview to let you decide what interests you and pick and choose different manuals to have a look at, to try out and work out on your own. To narrow it down and to keep it as concise as possible, I tried to focus on manuals that include or focus on cut fencing, so saber fencing most often, and also exclude all kinds of drill books and other kinds of regulations books that are not specifically fencing manuals. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on. You will find some bayonet exercises that I'm going to show you and some cavalry stuff as well, because there are some combined fencing treatises that show horseback and fencing on horseback and fencing on foot. So that will be in there. So today I'm going to be looking at the first 5 manuals and the other videos will release over the next few weeks. So let's get into the first one. So the first manual I'm going to talk about today is by Karl Timlich, who was fencing instructor for both the Imperial Austrian and the Royal Hungarian Guards. So he was fencing instructor to the Life Guards basically. And his manual is called Gründliche Abhandlung der Fechtkunst auf den Hieb, zu Fuß und zu Pferde zum Gebrauch der Cavallerie. That basically means thorough instructions in the art of fencing, on cut fencing, on foot and on horseback, for use in the cavalry. His manual is very interesting because it uses an older jargon for all the cut directions and parries, as you can see here. It also has a cuts diagram that many of you will maybe recognize as being similar to the 1796 manual by Le Marchant, the 6 cuts. But in fact, as you can see here, it shows 8 directions, so one straight from the top and straight from the bottom as well. Well, in principle, you can see that this is a cavalry manual, but he also starts at the very beginning with the basic footwork and cuts and parries, distance, and that kind of stuff. So it is also very useful for fencing on foot. So Timlich, if you want to see a late 18th century Napoleonic kind of style era manual from the Austrian Empire, Karl Timlich is your guy. You can find the manual and the link to all the manuals in the description down below. So that's that, and on to the next one. So the second manual in this series is from 1804 by a fencing master called de Saint-Martin, and it's in French. Why? Because this French fencing master was a fencing instructor at the Theresian Academy, one of the central military academy of the Austrian Empire, very important institution, especially later on. He was a fencing master and cavalry officer, as we learn from the first page of his manual, and he wrote this manual in French. Now, unfortunately, I don't speak French, but if you do, or if you know somebody who does, this one might really be worth checking out. Now, it starts out with a long section on épée fencing, so thrust-centric fencing, which looks quite nice, and it has all the bells and whistles and disarms and all that kind of stuff. And then he goes on to focus more on cut fencing. The plates that I'm showing you right now show cavalry on foot using cavalry sabers. But nevertheless, it's cut fencing on foot, which looks quite nice. And after that, he also focuses on cavalry, horseback fencing actions in quite some detail. And after that, he shows some glorious plates that I'm showing you right now of cavalry versus cavalry action and also cavalry versus infantry action. You can see the bayonetiers here to the left. So it's a really quite long manual with a great scope that really intrigued me. And I think if you speak French, this one might really be worth checking out. So the third manual is from 1838, and it's a more widely known one by Karl Thallhofer and Michael Isnardi, who were both fencing instructors at the Theresian Academy in Wiener Neustadt outside of Vienna. Now, they published their manual in 1838, the same year that Christmann published his manual by the same title, Theoretisch-practische Anleitung zur Fechtkunst à la contrepointe. Different systems, but it's both cut and thrust fencing with sabers or spadroons and that kind of stuff. The weapons that are used with this system are also in the plates volume. So it comes in two volumes, the text volume and the plates volume. Equipment that is used in the salle is shown here on this plate. It also focuses on defense against the bayonets at the end. So it's a cut and thrust system. It's a nice one. I'm still in the middle of transcribing that one. I'm about halfway through and I hope I get the time to finish it at some point, but it's still a work in progress. So that's that, and on to the next one. So the fourth manual in this video is by a fencing instructor called Josef Ott, who was a fencing instructor at the Artillery Academy in Olomouc, or Olmütz in German, in the present-day Czech Republic. Now, it's the second book in a 3-volume publication series that he published in 1853. The first one is on thrust fencing. The second one that we're looking now is on cut and thrust fencing. And the third one is on the history of fencing. So this one is entitled System der Fechtkunst à la contrepointe für den Stoß und Hieb, or in English, System of the Art of Fencing à la contrepointe for the thrust and the cut. This one is basically a drill book for the drill officer, the drill sergeant, to use for the drill, for the troops and recruits, officer cadets. Simple commands, as you might know from the Angelo infantry sword exercise, that's very famous. What's also typical for the mid to later 19th century manuals, which we are approaching now by 1853, is that there's increasingly sections on the duel with sharps, the duel of honor. And we do have a short section at the end of this manual remarking on the duel with sharps. So that's also something that's getting more common towards the mid and later 19th century, and we see it here in this manual as well. So it's an interesting manual. Have a look and see what you get out of it. The final treatise in this video is by August Hermann, who was also a fencing instructor at the Theresian Academy in Wiener Neustadt. His manual is from 1859. It's entitled Grundzüge einer Anleitung zum Säbelfechten, nebst Fechtaufgaben und deren Lösung. In English, basic instruction in saber fencing, as well as fencing tasks and their solutions. So this one is also a cut and thrust fencing manual for the use in fencing officer schools. It's basically a system that favors the prime guard. So this one here, let me just grab a saber real quick. Prime guard is this one. It's described as just below shoulder height. Prime is basically shielding your inside, guarding your inside, the side where your belly and your chest is. Yeah, so that's a style of fencing quite popular in the Austrian Empire at that time, favoring the prime as your primary engaging guard. Later on, we have the high tiers systems. We'll talk about those in the next video. And later on, even later on, we have the Italian system, Hungarian-Italian system creeping in, and finally replacing the old systems. So this one is favoring the prime as the engaging guard. In addition, it features one nice plate that shows you the targets on the body of your opponents, as well as the guards or parries, with detailed drawings and also the posture while fencing. So it's an interesting manual and I'd recommend you take a look. So that was the first 5 manuals from the Austrian Empire that I wanted to show you today and begin this series with. We started in the late 18th century and we're in the year 1859 right now. So next time we're going to start with a few more well-known manuals, I think, because the latter half of the 19th century is where all the name dropping happens. So Herxel, Barbasetti, all those kind of guys. We will approach those the next time and the video after, and I hope you learned something. Please leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and on that note, thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one. Thanks and bye bye.